Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Charles from the channel Books on Stereo, and I'm once again joined by one of my favorite booktubers, Taji from Taji's World of Books. And today we're going to be discussing Hurt by Lydia Michaels. This is book one in the Hurt series. Now, since it is a dark romance, romantic thriller, we really can't stay off spoilers, so we will get spoilery very, very quickly, but let me tell you guys what the book is about before we go into things. So we follow our main character, Colin. Once you meet him in the story, he's a ruthless killer. He's working at this hotel as a bartender, and he meets our heroine, which I believe her name is Emery, and she is like the receptionist at this hotel. And these two individuals have like a little fling that goes on, but things happen to the characters that irrevocably changes their world and sets them on a collision path for each other. And I will have to say this is a dark romance. There are trigger warnings. They're not provided to you in the book, but if you want to know what the trigger warnings are, you're more than welcome to stay for our spoilery chat. So to kick things off, Taji, what are your initial thoughts on this book?
I loved it. I absolutely loved how, well, first of all, like we're in the spoilery section. So, how she handles the assault that takes place, I thought was one of the grittiest, most difficult things that I've had to read. Because, in many of these dark romances, you're set up in a way where you know that a bad thing is coming and you can see the setup and you know it's going to happen. But the hero comes in at the last minute and rescues and saves. And in this, it doesn't happen. And you're there for every moment in that bathroom with her of what she's experiencing. And it's gritty and heartbreaking and soul destroying. And you're just like, when is this going to end? And when are we going to get our HEA in this moment, like of rescue and salvation? And it doesn't come. And for a long time. And so that was really, really difficult to read. But the way she did it, the way that Lydia Michaels wrote that scene, she wrote it with care and concern and tenderness in a really gritty and raw moment for me. I felt like it was handled with dignity in as much as something like that can be written. Let me say that. The other thing that I thought that Lydia Michaels did with this book that was an interesting spin on things is that we often think about assault and non-consensual situations from the lens of a woman, but she also brought in from the lens of a man. And and she also talks about how frequently and often assault occurs with men, but as a society we never discuss this and we don't talk about it and it's not put on page and we don't see it. And so I think that she turned these tropes and these stereotypes on their head by saying, hey, look, it's not just this, there's also this. And we need to pay attention to and focus and see how that impacts both sexes and how they handle it in very different ways and need very different levels of intervention and healing, and they grieve in different ways. So that's what stood out to me, outside of the revenge plot and all of that. That stood out to me first and foremost. What do you think, Charles?
Oh, I thought we were going to be on the same page on this one. I am the complete opposite of you.
All right, tell me.
I absolutely hated the book.
You hate.
I hated it. I think,
Tell me what
first
you.
off, I think because we were talking a little bit before we started filming and how you heard about this book from Jen.
Yeah.
And when I knew nothing about this book, I heard of this author. I know you read Breaking Perfect by her. I was like, oh, okay, I heard great things about this book, but I
Yeah.
never heard anything about this book. So I saw a dark romantic thriller, and
It's
like
fair.
I was like, maybe looking at the cover and it says he's a merciless killer.
Yeah.
I was getting like, oh, okay, what's gonna happen in this book? And once I actually started reading the book, Kalen's character,
Alan. Yeah.
I really did not like his character. Like his whole arc, what he went through, because he's positioned as like this merciless killer. But when
Hmm.
you actually think about it, you don't actually see him like go all out. Like maybe I think there's maybe one or two scenes where you see him actually like kill someone or like torture someone.
And tell me where you get that he was a merciless, because I never saw him as a merciless killer. Like I saw him as a broken hero that's a bare knuckle fighter that's struggling to survive to support his family, and he will do what he has to do in order to survive. And that means doing some things that he's not proud of and that he's not happy with, but that he's also doing things out of revenge against the people that have done wrong to him. So I saw him as a broken guy that became this, I don't want to say monster, but did things that he was ashamed of doing, but had to do it to protect the people he loved. So maybe our view of how I see him going into what happens then with Emery is very different than how you're looking at him. But what do you think?
Yeah, because the reason why I say merciless killer, because like in the synopsis that's on Goodreads, like it says he's turned into a merciless killer.
Ah.
And so that's what I was thinking. So I think initially my thing was the book, I was missold. I think this book is positioned very differently. And I did not expect for Kaylin's perspective to take up so much of the book. I think so many emotional beats that should have like really stuck with me. It never fully felt grounded with his character. Like when the house, like when initially, since we're in spoilers, when he has that final fight, there's no warning bells that are going off in his head. Like, hey, why is this guy trying to push $10,000 on me? Let me think about this.
Yeah.
And then when he finds his house burned down and he thinks that his siblings are dead.
Yes.
I didn't really feel it. Because we weren't really given a strong connection that he had to his siblings. So when they died, and then he went from 0 to 100, where he's like, I made a deal with God or hell to like become like, and even like the character of Reese, his best friend, was like, you went off the deep end. He just goes 0 to 100.
Right.
And then we kind of jump forward, I think it's like maybe 3 or 4 years to where he meets our heroine.
Right.
So like the way the book is constructed, you get all this backstory, and then I think like maybe like 10 chapters in, then you get the heroines, and it's a time jump. And then what happened to the heroine, I wish that was in some way like mentioned, like somewhere, like if you could find that spoiler that she was sexually assaulted in a pretty graphic way. Because when that scene happened, I was like, I was taken aback, because then I like how she handled the sexual assault and what happened afterwards. But I think for that character, for Emery's character, she deserved more time in the narrative, because in my mind, once that sexual assault happened, that became her only storyline. And then her relationship with Kaylin, which we don't actually see a ton of that progression, because I clocked in the book, they knew each other for 3 years.
Right.
And I was like, wait. Because now we're in the territory where like, I love you, I want to be with you. And I was like, wait. And then we're constantly flashing back to Kaylin's backstory and what happened with him, Rory, and his sister.
Right.
And it feels very like disjointed, because then when we get back to the heroine, then we get our sexual assault plot points. But for something of that serious and of that nature, I was like, that should have been more of a focus and I thought it was dealt with care, but that should have been more of a focus on the book, because Kaylin really was ineffective. Like, he can't protect anyone. Like, what happened to Reese? What happens to his sister? And he's like, that's the part where I said he's sold in the synopsis as a merciless killer. And when he's in these situations, I'm like, what?
No, I really saw him, and I guess because I didn't read that synopsis, so I went into this really blind. And I guess how I saw him, and I see those problematic things that you're talking about, that there needed to be more of a build up and like more of a storyline around it. But I saw Emery and Callan as star-crossed lovers, in that Callan is a virgin hero. So you remember, he had no sexual experience other than the assault he experienced. Right? And he had no way of knowing how to communicate with someone of the opposite sex. And he views himself the way you view him. He views himself as, I can't protect anybody and I fail everybody and I'm no good. and I'm damaged. And she is so fragile and so beautiful and so glorious and so wonderful that I will destroy her with my taint if I get close to her. So I'm going to admire her from afar. And she was doing the same, admiring him from afar and falling in love with him, but really not understanding how this could happen and how to approach him. And so they both were feeling similarly, but for different reasons at afar. And there was some, Lydia alludes to when he first goes into the home that he was stalking her, that he watched every move. He knew what tea she drank, he knew where she kept her key, and even like to the point of the cat, when he goes into the house and the cat really likes him and she goes, oh, such and such, Ernie likes you.
It takes a build up, yeah.
Build up. He was like, he was there for every moment of it. And I think he is a broken character who tries hard to protect the people that he loves, but fails and feels as though he fails miserably. And it actually is Emery that upholds him, even though she has gone through this traumatic assault and event. You can see that she is a stronger character emotionally than he is. And so she is the one that says, we have to fight past this. If we're going to move past this and get past what's happened to us, you can't shy away. And I think that she's the one who pushes the sexual engagement and the interaction, and she drives the relationship, because it's a juxtaposition. And that's why I said I think that Lydia turned stereotypes on its head, because we see this, and I think that was her purpose in writing this graphic sexual assault scene and seeing her go through that, but then seeing who she becomes to Callan and helping him to no longer hide in the shadows, to be honest about who he is, to talk about and discuss, and then also to explore his sexuality, because he couldn't do it. He wasn't able to. It was Emery that helped him on that journey and path. So I think that part of what Lydia did was purposeful and maybe it was like a missell. They shouldn't have said he's a merciless killer, because he's not in any way, shape, or form. He's a broken character who did the best that he could in many ways to protect people and failed, and was really like aware of his failures, and that even weighed heavier on him. Hence why he was like, I'll be here for you because I know what this is like to experience this, but you don't need me in your life. I'm only going to destroy you and make it worse for you, because that's what I do for the people that I love. Now, what I am going to say is that it felt undone at the end. Like at the end, for me, and I know that she left it open to write more books in this world, because when you go on Goodreads, it says her series
book one.
But when you go to her website and check, she's not writing, and she wrote this in 2019.
Yeah, there's no plans for a second book right now.
No plans. And so like I felt like it felt rushed at the end. Like it felt like there wasn't a good sort of bring things together and walk you through that. It went boop, boop, and done. And I was like, were you at a rush at a deadline to get it done, or what happened? Or so that I felt a bit unsatisfied with. But overall,
and that's like a point that when you bring up the ending, that's what I was hoping what Lydia Michaels would have done in the end, that everything would have came to a resonant head and we got a good ending for these characters. Like, what was the point of burning down the house if you saved all the siblings? So Gavin and Imani or Imaris are alive. So
yes.
like when I saw those threads, I was like, I don't know what you're trying to. I get what you were trying to do, but the execution, the way Kalen's character was, because I get 100% like what you're saying about his character and his arc and what she was trying to do, but I felt like you had to read between the lines to get that nuance, which I think is not like, you should mostly be with the character and understand what the character is going throughout the book, not kind of remove yourself and go like, oh yeah, I get what she was doing with the character, because Kalen's journey, and I think the way it was written was the part where it kind of put me off. I was like, why are we flashing back to a time point where our heroine doesn't actually find out until like the last 20% ish of the book, and she's like oddly okay with it. And there's so many gaps and so many left plot holes that are open for the story by you. And I think that's where I was like, you didn't bring it to a satisfactory where all the lines came together, all the storylines came together.
Mm-hmm.
And so like that's where the book was falling apart for me, because I had to restart this book twice. I read it through and I was just like, wait, hold on, let me go back and let me give this another shot. and let
Yeah.
me see if I'm missing anything. But the more I slowed down and read it, I was like, Kalen going from 0 to 100, his dynamic with the family, it didn't feel like everything was grounded with these characters. Like the romance felt very sidelined, and a lot of it was you kind of filled in the details.
Mm,
Like, okay, they know each other for 3 years, so they're pining for each other all this time. And then
mm,
when they actually get together, that progression of that relationship, I felt like you spent more time on Caitlin's backstory. Our heroine only gets like maybe like a chapter on her backstory with her parents, which is like,
mm.
wait, your parents kicked you out because you had sex? I'm like, hold on, let's go into that a
Right.
little bit more and let's explore that. And so like that's where the book didn't work. Like the characters, I was just like things that should have been heartbreaking to read about. What like what happened with Caitlin with Rory. I was like, I needed more about Rory. Why is he such a psychopath? Why is he so crazed on like you're mine, Caitlin? And why did he all of a sudden want to sexually assault Caitlin? You
Hmm.
know what I mean? There was some things I was like, okay, why are all these things happening to this character? Why is he in this situation? Why burn down the house and save all the siblings?
Hmm.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean? It was like little things like that that I was like, okay, where are you going with this? And I was hoping we get more books so she can explain that. But
That's hoping
it's a
like
weird thing. It's like a standalone, but a beginning of the series, but it reads like this is it for this couple.
it does kind of, and I'm hoping that like if we get other books, it seems like there's a setup for other books that it might fill in a bit more and we might understand more. But you have to remember too that this book is already 550 pages. So like in order to fill in all those things that will like tighten it up, we would be at like a 700-page contemporary book. And that just, unless you're in fantasy land and you're writing a fantasy and world building, I don't need 700 pages. Do you know what I mean? In this book.
That's
So
why I said like some of the plot things could have been tightened up. Like it was weird retconning Gavin's death all of a sudden, like all the way into the book. So like I hope it's a series. That would change how I view the book. But I think there were so many things that could have been tightened up. Stop with all the time jumps. Bring in Emery's character much more earlier into the beginning. Condense his backstory because yeah, like his. That's why I was like so confused. I was like, wait, have we not met the heroine? And then you find out it's like 4 years, and now he's in the USA and he's undocumented.
yeah,
I
yeah,
was like, what is going on right now? So
yeah.
I totally get everything that you're saying, and like I agree, like on a conceptual level what she was doing,
Mhm.
but actual execution, I think this is where the book is going to. I think if you're a fan of dark romance, you may appreciate some of the things that are done here, so that
Mhm.
may change your rating.
Mhm.
I'm coming from this as not a huge dark romance reader,
Yes.
so I'm like I'm very particular. I'm like you have to bring your A game if you're
Right.
going, especially with the sexual assault, not warning readers that was going to happen to both the male and the female character.
Well, she
That's where it kind of. I don't think it's in the. I don't remember there being a content warning or somewhere where it said
no, there's a content.
that.
She
Oh,
says
there
the
it is.
story is characterized as a dark, suspenseful thriller and contains multiple scenes of graphic violence, non-consensual sex, and torture. It is also a love story.
Oh no. Okay. Okay. I get. I guess. I was thinking she would like call it out more explicitly.
And she
Of like.
also does like go into there's before we begin, she gives a long sort of explanation. And she also talks about tragedy doesn't end in the courtroom or, in a closet. Like she goes through and talks through, why her impetus for
Oh.
this happens everywhere. So she gives that layout before you read it. And I also like at the very end of the book as well, she gives some real statistics on sexual assault that occurs both in men and women and how many of those are prosecuted to full end with satisfactory outcomes. So I feel like that was there. But what I was going to say um, is I think to your point about there wasn't a lot with the relationship, I feel like she couldn't give in this book a lot on the relationship because so much time was spent on Emery's healing after this graphic assault. Like, you couldn't jump into a relationship. They could only do it in increments the way that they did, which is keeping her safe, letting her not feel alone, helping her to feel protected, showing that their friendship slash courtship occurred in that way. Do you know what I mean? And so now we're
Yeah.
at 3/4 of the book, where we're looking, and also that was kind of peppered in with the court case and him supporting her with the court case. But at the same time saying, I'm here, but I'm not going to tell you what to say, or I'm not going to get,
Yeah.
let you do that.
I'm not gonna force myself. I'm gonna let you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like I wish we got that 3 years in between where they know each other, so at least we have a baseline of how they interact. Because it seemed like in the book that he comes over at one specific point before he leaves, and that's their only interaction.
Mm.
So I wanted to know a little bit more about what's happening in those 3 years, because I would say, like, percentage wise, this reads more like Kaylin's book, with Emery kind of like what Emery's plot kind of speckled in a little bit. Because she does, if I remember correctly, she doesn't come in until pretty far into the book.
She doesn't.
And then, like, compare the chapters between Kaylin and Emery, it really reads like Kaylin, like, this is more from his book, and maybe if she does write another book, it'll be more from Emery's perspective.
And
Maybe like a dual, like a switch, like retelling type situation, and maybe that could fill in some of the gaps. But yeah, I like this. I think it's strong to say I didn't hate this book. I think it just didn't work for me. Because I get everything that she was doing, but to me, I was like, oh no, like, it didn't, execution wise. I was really confused when I heard thriller. I was like, this isn't read as a thriller. It reads more like a contemporary with some darker elements.
Yeah.
So I think my mind was like, when you see the cover and you see like the blurb, you're like, oh, romantic thriller. So I'm thinking romantic suspense, like she's running from something, or like there's something suspenseful or tension filled that's going on throughout this book, and you don't quite get that.
Right.
So that's why I think, like, initially, like, I couldn't divorce myself from what I was thinking what the book was going to be. That's why I restarted it again, because the marketing really kind of makes you go like, what?
And that's why I like to go into things really blind, and I don't want people to tell me about it, because then that's going to set my thinking up to go down a path. And when you switch it up on me, I'm like, wait, I get like stuck in that. So for me, like, I went into it like based on the cover, and I was like hurt, and the fire. I was like, okay, so she's playing on like this hurts, everything hurts, in terms of like when he experienced the fire, wouldn't give up, got damaged and burned. And even like when they have the first episode, or the first sort of romantic encounter, and he's letting her see him for the first time, he's not only broken because, and they remember they had that conversation, and he said, don't hold my arms down. And she said, and don't grab me from the back. They had to have a transaction around how to interact with one another, because it was just, so when you take I don't know what to do on top of trauma, like, I just felt like that was handled really, really well. And then when she sees his legs from the fire and the damage that he went through, I think it was so powerful. And I do think when you look at the book, on the cover it says the Hurt series. So, and it's a dark romantic thriller. It ended on a cliffhanger in terms of this unexplained, like, who was the one who killed, with
the dude.
Yeah, what's his name? Drew? I think his name was Drew.
No, is it Drew? I don't remember. I don't remember.
Yeah, whatever the guy's name was, that was the
abuser, or the offender.
Yeah, whatever his name was murdered in prison. I think that book 2 was going to pick, and Emery says, I think she did it for me. And so
the sister, Kaylin's sister.
And Inez did it for me because she sees me as a mom for, the little girl. Exactly. And so I think that book 2, you're right, if it comes from Emery's perspective, and then you get the fill in and maybe some more gaps, because it seems like her way of telling the story is in a split timeline, then and now and present day. So going back and coming forward. And so if she does that from Emery's perspective, then it will really make sense. But again, it's an author's choice to decide to split things up and do 2 separate books. And sometimes it works, and other times you go like that just didn't in execution work out, and readers are upset by that. And that might be an example of this, right? We'll have to see when the next book come out, because clearly it's going to be a series, it's going to be a trilogy, so she's writing more. So we'll see who gets what book, and I'm imagining that we'll hear more about Inez and Reese, right? We'll hear about their, even though that's where it is. So we'll see where it goes.
So you will be continuing if more books are released.
I will. And I'm a dark romance reader, so right, and I like dark romance, and I think the execution of this and the dark elements and how this was handled, this is definitely up my alley. Yeah. So
I'm the opposite. I will not be continuing on with the series. I may try other books from this author, but very low priority because I wasn't impressed. Like, it's just like I said, the execution. Like, you have 500 plus pages that you could have like fleshed these things out, fleshed these characters out. And so like it was just I totally get why your reasons for loving it. And like I think this is like a book that you fall on like one or two sides. Like you either appreciate it for what it's doing for the genre, or you could be like more like me and say like I didn't hate it, but the book just didn't work for me.
Yeah.
So bringing us to our closing, what is your final rating on this book? I feel like you're gonna give it a 5.
I gave it a 5. It's probably going to hit my top standalones, because I separate for the year.
And I love the series.
I'll probably the top. Like I'll have to see what I read for the rest of the year, but I really loved this book. I absolutely loved it.
Okay. I'm going to give it a 1 out of 5. Maybe 2. Maybe a 2 out of 5 if I'm feeling nice, but
2 for the cover. Pretty.
Well, because I would say it's worse than in my mind, it's worse than Lady of Rooksgrave Manor, which I gave a 2.
No. Manor just smut. That was erotica. This had a plot. That didn't even have a plot.
Catherine Moon could write a better steamy scene than Lydia Michaels. Like by the time the two characters were getting together, I was like, I don't even care right now. Like this is not like because I didn't have any progression. I didn't get like the chemistry building moments. You get some of them, but you feel like a lot of the romance happens off page, which I was really annoyed by. So like, as a romance, it didn't work for me. As a thriller, it didn't work for me. As a dark romance, it didn't work for me. So like, I have to be fair and like, it would get a 1. I'm not saying it's bad, but like if I say like if I compare it to Ladies of Rooksgrave Manor, enjoyment level. No, I'm not saying it's crap. I'm not saying I hate it. It just didn't work for me. So like a 1 is like my way of like that's because I can't give it a 3. It wasn't things I liked enough to outweigh the negative things that I didn't like.
Yeah.
So like take that with a grain of salt. You may like it. It's just my rating. Everyone knows I give out 1 star, so it's not anything new. But thank you guys again so much for watching this video. Let us know down in the comment section down below if you have read this book, if you enjoy it, or are you going to pick up this book based on our thoughts, or not pick up this book based on our thoughts. And we'll be coming back to you guys with a brand new video, brand new book that we will hopefully announce at some point. We're still figuring things out, so hang with us. But Taji, any last words that you want to say before I wrap us up?
I think we got some really interesting and exciting things coming your way in the next couple of videos. So we'll have some announcements coming up. So we're really excited about that. So this has been a fun ride, and I hope that you guys continue to hang in there with us. Yeah.
Okay. I couldn't have said it any better, but thank you guys again so much for watching, and we'll catch you guys with a brand new video. Bye.